Okay, we've got the new playoff rankings coming out tomorrow. Here are the odds to win it all. Ohio State distancing itself a little bit from the rest of the field at plus 185. Then it's Indiana. Those teams could meet, likely to meet in the Big Ten championship game. And look at Notre Dame, the fourth shortest odds to win it all at 10-1. Let's get into it with Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli. Each and every Monday, Tom Fornelli brings us his college football playoff tiers. We'll start at 5 and work our way down to 1. And at 5, it's at least 2 of these teams are going to be here. And Tom, it's a bunch of teams, almost double digits, because it's like a bunch of the ACC and a bunch of the American.
Yeah, the fact is that, with the 5 conference champions or top 5 highest rated conference champions, that means at least 2 of these teams, whether we want them in the playoff or not, are going to be there. And it is a big field because if you look at the ACC right now, there are still a bunch of teams who are in the running for it, as there are in the American. And then, of course, there is James Madison, who I'm on the record as saying I do not think there is a path for James Madison to get in when they start comparing their possible resume to the whoever ends up winning the American Athletic Conference champion, but I'll admit there's like a 0.001% chance I'm wrong about that and keep JMU in these tiers. But when you look at all these teams, the fact of the matter is they're not going to be playing a home game in the first round, but there's a chance that 2 of them will be playing on the road in the first round.
Yeah, one team that's really jumps out at me from this group is actually from the American. It is the Navy Midshipmen coming off that big win this past weekend against South Florida. And it's because of what we saw just last year when Army won the American Athletic Conference championship game. Playing that team in a one-off scenario creates just a lot of variance where even though there are other teams certainly in the American who are very capable and would be favored in that game based on their power rating and relative talent and strength, I think that Navy can close a lot of those gaps in that type of game. And so if Navy can finish the job, clinch a spot in the American Athletic Conference championship game, it is not the team that a lot of models would spit out as the one that's favored to win that league, but where they are in their conference schedule, they're 1 win away from finishing 7-1 in league play. So they're one that I'm looking at that could be a real problem in the conference title game.
Interesting to see East Carolina on there, a team that just beat Memphis, a team that could sneak their way into the American Conference Championship game and have a shot. Let's go to Tier 4, and this tier is labeled Nothing Guaranteed. Now, you've got 2 teams grouped together here that make sense, Miami and Notre Dame, because they played each other. But when you look at the odds to win it all in the sports line simulations on getting to the college football playoff, they've got Notre Dame having a much better chance than Miami. So why do you still group them together?
Well, first of all, do not get me started on simulations that give us percentages of a team's chance to get to the playoff, because that's a whole other rant that you don't have time for right now. But I do think that with Notre Dame and Miami, the situation is clear. Both of these teams can win out and still be left out in the cold come Selection Sunday, because when you look at Notre Dame, there is the possibility that they are 10-2 being compared to Miami at 10-2. For a final at-large spot, and there's that little data point that will probably play a big factor and if they get in trying to choose between them, in which Miami beat Notre Dame. That said, if we look at the rankings and the way that the committee has ranked these 2 teams to this point, they don't really seem to care too much about that head-to-head match because they do have such a sizable gap between the Fighting Irish and the Hurricanes. So essentially this tier is just these guys don't really control their own destiny, because even at 10-2, there's no guarantee that either of them will be in the dance, simply because there just might not be a spot left for them to take.
Miami Hurricanes college football playoff path. Miami Hurricanes college football playoff path. Doing it for the SEO. Here you go. So Miami Hurricanes fans, here's the deal. You need just 4 things to even be entertained. You need a Notre Dame loss. You need an Alabama loss. You need an Oklahoma loss, and you need an Oregon loss. Now remember, on CBS, Oregon is playing USC, but they've also got Washington left. If you get a Notre Dame loss, an Oklahoma loss, an Alabama loss, and an Oregon loss, now we're starting to look at the kinds of debates that could allow Miami to get an at-large spot. But that is the path right now. Notre Dame, it feels like if they do lose, they are obviously out of this thing altogether because of who is left on their schedule. But yeah, the Hurricanes are still in it. They just, as Tom mentioned, do not control their own destiny and in fact need all of the legs of the parlay to hit.
Yeah, I also wonder what it would be like if there's 1 spot remaining and it's 10-2 Notre Dame and 10-2 Vanderbilt out of the SEC, what that conversation would be like. And that's where we go next to Tier 3, Tom, and teams that have it all out there in front of them, presumably winning out and getting in. And two of these teams play each other on CBS this Saturday.
Yeah, this is pretty much I control my own destiny, because it's hard for me to look at the resumes that these 6 teams currently have and imagine them not getting at least one of those at-large spots should they win out. There would have to be a whole lot of chaos elsewhere to knock these teams out of the field at this point. So when you look at it, obviously, yes, Oregon and USC are playing this weekend. If USC loses that game, I really don't think it has a shot to get into the playoff at 9-3 no matter what. And Oregon, if they lose that game, you're suddenly looking at a team whose resume starts looking a lot flimsier, in that the 2 best teams they've played on the season are the 2 teams that they've lost to, and their wins don't look nearly as good in retrospect. So I think that that is a huge game for both. Clearly, this is really, really deep analysis. They should win these games if they want to get to the playoff. As for everybody else, I mean, it's very cut and dry. Like Oklahoma at this point, after beating Alabama this weekend, even if they weren't great in that game, if they're 10-2 with a win over Alabama, they're in the field.
Yeah, a lot of these Tier 3 teams, it's all in front of them, except for other teams in Tier 3 all in front of them. You know, like BYU and Texas Tech, they can't both necessarily get in there, or at least they can't both feel good about it. USC, Michigan, they've already played. USC, Oregon, we'll see that on CBS. You know, as we look at sort of the big picture of this college football playoff race, there are a lot of teams that do have it all in front of them, but they can't all be able to finish the job. So it'll be interesting to see it play out.
Before we get into the next tier, I do want to ask Tom, you didn't include Vanderbilt or Utah, 2 teams that are within striking distance, I guess, of the top 12. Why not those teams?
I mean, I think you could have included them in the last tier, and maybe I probably should have. It's just when you start getting to like the 20th team on the list, it's you're starting to push buttons. But I do think that they are in the same spot as Notre Dame and Miami. If they win out, there's a good chance that they could get in, but they're not guaranteed of anything. And I think Utah, of those 2, has by far the slimmest path, because they will look at them and say, well, you got blown out at home by Texas Tech, and you also lost to BYU.
All right, let's go to Tier 2. And it's teams that you're calling suddenly worried. Now, you've got 2 teams from the SEC, 2 teams coming off a loss, but 2 teams with different resumes, different loss totals, Alabama and Texas. Texas with 3 losses, Alabama with a much easier schedule, but Texas with a chance at a huge win at the end of the year against Texas A&M.
Yeah, believe me, I would love to throw Texas out of the paint here now that they have 3 losses and say that they do not have a shot, nor should they be in the field. But if they do finish 9-3, that gives them that win over Texas A&M, like you just mentioned. And you're going to be looking at their resume and you're going to say, yeah, they lost by 25 to Georgia. They lost to a possibly 3-9 Florida, but they also have wins over Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and I can't remember their third one, or Vanderbilt, their other top 25 wins. So that would be a kind of resume where you do start to wonder, how much does that outweigh the bad losses on the resume? Because it's one thing to lose to Georgia, it's another thing to lose to them by 25. So I think the path is still very slim, but you are certainly worried because there's absolutely no margin for error left for the Longhorns. And for Alabama, you did have some margin for error until you lost to Oklahoma, and now that is much slimmer than it was before. So there's still the path for Alabama to get to the SEC championship and then win the SEC championship, which would clearly take away any kind of speculation about their future in the playoff. But what happens if they lose to Auburn now? Because that is not exactly a game that's been very easy for the Tide over the years, even when the records between these 2 teams are much different.
Oh my goodness, Kalen DeBoer. We are 2 months separated from that lady going on the news and saying she was going to spend her lottery winnings on your buyout, okay? Do not lose the Iron Bowl to fall to 9-3. I mean, that's very simple. You want to talk about suddenly worried? Don't be sitting there on Selection Sunday for the 2nd year in a row at 9-3, possibly on the chopping block, making everybody across the country who loves the Alabama football program sweat over their status in the wake of losing the Iron Bowl. Yeah, this is an Alabama got to get it done for lots of reasons, the first of which being, of course, their college football playoff future.
Won't be sweating this weekend. They're taking on the vaunted Eastern Illinois Panthers from Tom Fornelli's home state. Let's get to the top, and it's 5 locks. Who are the 5 teams right now, Tom, that are already in the playoff in your mind?
Yeah, these guys are in. They've clinched it. They've wrapped it. They could take the next few weeks off if they really wanted to. It's Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Georgia. And I think Georgia beating Texas on Saturday was the one that really clinched it for them. Even if they lose to Georgia Tech, miss out on the SEC championship, they're going to get in the field. The only thing we're wondering is, will they have a bye or will they have to play at home in the first round? And I think Ole Miss is the exact same situation. Now that they have the one loss, they still have their Egg Bowl remaining after going on a bye this week. But even if they lose the Egg Bowl, which I think we have to consider is in the realm of possibility considering the way that game goes, a 10-2 Ole Miss is going to get in the field. The only thing, again, on the line for them is, will they have a home game in the first round or not?
Yeah, this is very instructive. I agree with all of Tom's selections. I did the same exercise myself to try to identify who do we really feel good about, as in, like, could lose their next game and still be okay. Those are the teams that I've got on my list as well. These are not teams that you want as a part of your parlay to get in as an at-large, because these teams already have it padlocked, locked it up.
Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli with us here on HQ. You can hear them on the Cover 3 podcast, the latest episode, really getting into the weeds of some conference tiebreaker scenarios that could get really hairy in the SEC and even potentially the Big Ten, as referenced earlier in the show.